Welcome, folks, to the another episode, I should say, of the Matias Sports Podcast. Episode 17, actually. Have another wonderful guest, Noah Eigel. I hope I said that right.
It's eagle, like the
Eagle.
bird, but we
Sorry,
take
my
it
my,
anyway.
my bad, my bad. I apologize.
That's all right.
Obviously, he just recently did the Paris Olympics, so he's been, a sports broadcaster, went to Syracuse, yada yada yada. But feel free to tell the people who you are.
Well, Ken, I appreciate you having me on. First and foremost, long time coming here.
Yep.
Yeah, it's broadcasting is in the DNA for sure. I grew up the son of a broadcaster. My dad, Ian, long time doing this since before I was just an idea in his head. And here I am now doing it, all these years later, but grew up in Jersey, so Northeast all the way through, and went to Syracuse as mentioned, loved my time. My 4 years there were awesome, and graduated there, was out in LA doing the LA Clippers on the radio for a couple years, four to be exact. And now with NBC doing college football, doing college basketball, did some tennis, some Olympics, and anything else they ask me to do, that's where I'll be. So you can find me there along with the Brooklyn Nets and a whole bunch of other places in the sports world.
No, that's awesome to hear. And first and foremost, let's start with the LA Clippers gig. How did that come about? Was that just through like a connection through school? I think you might have mentioned to me who it was, but
Yeah, so when I was at Syracuse my senior year, it was early in my senior year, and I wasn't really sure what to do in terms of looking for a job. And I think a lot of us go through that period of like,
hmm
okay, what's that next step? How do we become real adults now instead of just staying in this college bubble for the rest of our lives, even though that's probably what we want to do. But I didn't really have anything I was thinking of trying to find or any of that. I asked my dad, what do you think? Like, should I start going after stuff? Should I start poking around? He said, wait till at least March. Enjoy your senior year and focus on doing really well. Focus on getting better on the air. Focus on crushing each assignment that you have in front of you. So that's what I did. And around January or February of my senior year, I had a professor named Olivia Stomsky, who is still there. She is the head of the sports media center at Syracuse University and now Newhouse, which is the media school there. And she was still active in the industry at the time and has a lot of connections still. And basically, what happened was Ralph Lawler, who had been doing the Clippers for 40 years, that was his 40th season that year, was going to retire at the end of the year. And so Steve Ballmer, the owner of the team, basically tasked the television crew along with the business side of the Clippers organization with finding the widest possible range of candidates to replace him. And so that included people who had been doing it for 30 years, and that included people who had been doing it like myself for 0 years professionally.
Mhm.
And so she reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you build a basketball reel and send it to me so I can send it out to somebody who's interested?" I said, "Well, who's interested?" She said, "I can't tell you that." I go, "Well, that seems unfair because I'm putting it together." She goes, "Trust me, it's better if you don't know." I go, "Okay, no problem." So I put something together. I sent her that. A week later, sent her a resume, and she kind of sent it off. And then I didn't hear anything. And so about 2 months go by, somewhere around there. Month and a half goes by. I hear nothing. And I'm driving in early April, right after the Final Four. I'm driving to a radio show I'd been doing every Monday night downtown in Syracuse. And I get a call from an LA number I didn't have. And I answered it, and it was this guy named Nick Davis who works at the now Bally's, but at the
hmm
time Fox Sports West.
Yep.
And he called and he said, "Hey, I'm sure you're aware, but Ralph Lawler's retiring, and we'd love to fly you out and interview you and audition you next week." And I'm like, "What?
Wow.
Are you serious? This is a real thing. This is happening." And yeah, it was. It was very much real. And I'm thankful I picked up the phone. And the next week I flew out and I interviewed with the Clippers. I interviewed with their TV side of things. I auditioned with Corey Maggette and I took a red eye back to Syracuse. It went well. And I heard that Steve Ballmer, the owner, then wanted to meet me the following week. So I flew to
Wow.
Seattle, did a 90-minute one-on-one chat with him. And when I left that interview, I turned to him before I walked out the door and I said, "Mr. Ballmer, I want to thank you for the opportunity. But more than anything, I want to let you know that if I get this job, then your organization, the LA Clippers, will become my whole life. I will make it my life."
Yeah.
He said, "Okay, good to know." And so I walk out. I take another red eye back. I had a couple more weeks until I graduated. So finished up school, graduated, went home, and literally the day after I think I got home from Syracuse after my senior year, I got a call from the president of the team, and she said, "We're moving the radio guy up to TV, but we'd like for you to then take the radio job. Take the weekend to decide." I was like, "Take the weekend? I can tell you right now. I don't need. I could give you a second, but." I played it nice and cool. I was like, I appreciate it. Sounds good. I'll let you know. And so I called back on a Sunday and said, I'm good to go. And the rest was kind of history from there. I did my 4 years and it was really wonderful.
That's awesome, man. I mean, originally they were looking for what? Somebody on the radio side, or it was TV ad? Sorry.
Yeah. So
It
they were
was on
looking
the
for the
radio.
TV side.
Oh,
And
TV, yeah.
basically, one of the candidates, aside from myself, was the radio guy, Brian Seaman, who had been there for 12 years on the radio. And so it was the right decision. Brian was a fabric of the organization, knew the team inside and out, does an excellent job. And so he got bumped up to TV. It left the radio job open. And then that's when they decided, you know what, we really liked this guy in the interview. We liked his audition. Let's see if he can do it.
Was that the first time you went out to like LA and stuff like that when they flew you out, or when you flew out from New York or New Jersey?
So I mean, I had been out there, on like a vacation, but I hadn't
Hmm.
really been out for extended periods, or definitely not for any kind of work, anything related to that. So it was the first time to in that capacity for sure. And then once I moved out there, it was really the first time I was getting extended time in Los Angeles. And so living there 4 years, I could tell you pretty much everything about the city now. But when I first got out there, I didn't really know a soul and I was living all alone. And I was just like, we're going to have to figure this out. And that's what we did.
That's an awesome, awesome story. I mean, that's amazing. Just not many probably kids or young gentlemen like you can say right out of school, I'm gonna go work for the Clippers, the
No
Celtics.
doubt.
Like that's crazy. I mean, that's a phenomenal story. I mean, you wouldn't regret one thing on it. I mean, looking back on it now, right, to where you are today.
No, it was the best thing to happen to me in so many ways. And not just the fact that I got to go out there and do NBA basketball, which I was a huge NBA
Hmm.
fan. That was always my passion was the NBA, and basketball and football was right behind it, but the fact that it got to be the NBA was really big, but on top of all of that, it allowed me to go and really find myself even more as a broadcaster because I was doing every game by myself. I didn't have an analyst with
Oh
me on the
wow,
radio.
okay.
So it forced me to learn how to basically play a bunch of different roles, how to wear a number of different hats over the
Hmm.
course of a broadcast. And realistically, the best thing it did was it gave me so much experience in so many different scenarios and situations within games that no matter what pops up now, I feel like I've been through it already.
I mean, that's impressive. So you were doing color and play-by-play on the radio by yourself all four
Yes.
years?
Yeah, yeah. Can
Wow.
most people can think when someone talks to themselves they're a crazy person, but for me it came with a paycheck. So it was a pretty good gig.
No, that's awesome. I mean, what was your like your highs and lows reflecting on it? I mean, obviously everything, every job, no matter what you do, has got its ups and downs. So if you want to, nitpick a few highlights, maybe a couple of low points if you want to share
Well, I mean, highlights there were an
every day.
abundance. Yeah, there were an abundance of highlights. I mean, the fact that we get to travel with the team, right?
Hmm.
So for me, getting on the plane with players, coaches, staff members, and staying in the same hotels as them is really cool. And I think that's probably the best perk of the job is you get to feel like you're a player despite having very limited athletic ability and being vertically challenged in my case, so when you get that aspect of fulfilling the lifelong dream of being in the NBA without actually being in the NBA. So that part's amazing. On top of that, you get to be there for all these amazing moments. And I was fortunate enough that my second year with the team, they made it to the conference finals, which was the first time in their franchise's history that they got to the conference finals. So I got to be there for that whole run, and that was magical in many respects. The cons, it's great in some respects to have no analyst, but you want somebody. You get a little bit lonely sometimes on the air, especially if it's a blowout or even if it's an exciting game. You just feel like you want somebody who can bounce things off of or share the experience with. So I definitely miss that aspect of it at times, but way, way more pros than there were cons doing that job for 4 years. And I met so many great people and established so many amazing relationships that will hopefully stay with me for a long time through the rest of my career.
No, that's amazing. I mean, you mentioned Corey Maggette. I think I probably briefly remember him playing. I mean, how
Yeah.
was meeting him? Because I know he was a pretty average or decent, ball player in the league for a while, and I think I remember him with the Clippers. So if you want to
Yeah.
share how, meeting him for the first time and stuff like that when you were going through the interview process.
Yeah, Ken, it was awesome because he's an awesome person. He's
Hmm.
just a super nice dude with an infectious smile and wants to have fun and wants to joke around. And so for me, I did grow up watching Corey in the NBA, and I remember him all the way back to his short time at Duke. And he's a Chicago guy, so kind of the city feel, and he was just easy to get along with, and he made me so comfortable in that audition. And then yeah, he kept working with the Clippers when I was there, but I mean, I've had a chance to work with so many amazing people. He is just one of the long, long list, and a list that keeps growing. And I'm very fortunate that I've been put in position so far in my career that I've had pretty much all hits and no misses. And so I take that with a lot of gratitude and hope that the trend continues for a long time.
No, that's good stuff to hear. I mean, this conversation so far, I've had a blast listening to this because I'm kind of envisioning what's been going on like the 4 years you were there, and I was kind of living it through your eyes, and I'm like, wow, like that's amazing. It really is. But yeah, so shifting gears a little bit, if you want to talk about your dad, I mean, that's one of the guys that I love hearing call football, basketball. I mean, I don't know what other sports he does, but he's got that unique voice just growing up listening to him. I've probably talked about it with my dad too. Like, like I've talked to like Noah, like, hey, I talked to Ian Eagle's son. Like, that's amazing. Like, I DM him and stuff like that on Twitter. But talk about like your strong relationship and when you first started basically falling in love with like sports broadcasting, or thanks to your dad, it was basically right off the bat when you were little.
Yeah, so I'm in my kind of office secondary room in my apartment right now, and hanging above me to the right is the first jersey I ever owned, which was given to me when I was about 6 months old, maybe, and it's a Keyshawn Johnson Jets jersey,
Wow.
framed and signed by him. So this goes back a long, long time. This was,
Hmm.
I would say that I was in on the sports stuff real early. And I think part of that was because of him. And I got to see him at the events. And more than anything, I got to see him interacting with people at these events. His analysts, his producers, his directors, but even security guards at MetLife Stadium, or at, if you want to go all the way back,
Giant
Giant
Stadium.
Stadium.
Yep.
If you want to go all the way back on the NBA side, Continental Airlines Arena, and wherever we might have been,
Hmm.
those types, A2s and stage managers and fans that came up to him. And so I got to see the type of joy that he could provide, and that he kind of radiated through the rest of the people around him, how he could light a room up. And I loved that aspect of it. Now, the sports side of it, I grew up in the New York area, northern New Jersey, about 25, 30 minutes away from New York City. My dad's from Queens originally. So
Oh, wow.
that New York fandom of what it means to be a sports fan, and I'm not even just talking about the team side of it. I'm talking about the overall level of just the correct word of fanatic. It feels like you have that around New York. And so to grow up around that, to grow up around this level of just desire and will to win and all of the other stuff. I mean, Boston's very similar, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
That's easy to then fall in love with. I think it's intoxicating in a lot of ways. And so I think I got engulfed in that very quickly as well. But I didn't decide that I wanted to do exactly what my dad did until I was probably about 13. He probably knew it around 7 years old, according to him, when he was really young. He said, "This is what I want to do." And the great thing was his parents said, "Then that's what you're going to do." And so I think he learned from them how empowering that can be, that a young kid hears from the people that he or she respects the most in the world, "You can do this, or you will do this." That's massive. And so for me and my sister, it was the same way. Both my parents were going to be incredibly supportive, whatever we wanted to do. And by the time I was 13, after I had given a number of speeches and classes that had went well, I'd had teachers come up to me and say, "I think you're going to do something in public speaking one day." And at the time, I was like, "I'm going to play in the NBA. What are you talking about? I'm going to be an all-American point guard in college, and I'm going to be a first-round pick." Yeah, that didn't happen. And so I think once you realize that that's not happening, what's the next best thing? How can I still stay close to this? How can I still get this adrenaline rush? How can I still feel like I'm part of a locker room? And that's what broadcasting games really allows you to do. And I've seen that, especially from the recently retired athletes that I've worked with. There's this level of camaraderie that comes with this job that you really just can't simulate anywhere else other than actually playing the game. So easy to fall in love with it. I think from 13 years old on, I really lasered in and went to work once I got to college.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I've seen a lot of athletes just transition from their playing days, maybe not even take a year or two off, and they go right to radio or like TV. It's like, damn, I honestly wish I was them. I mean, I never was talented enough to stick playing baseball and basketball growing up, but I mean, I love all the four major sports. I got a strong passion like you do, and you're terrific at it. I mean, the little I was seeing the Paris Olympics with Team USA, were you doing the women's side too? I know you did the men's, but
I did men's, women's. We did a
men's.
couple non-US games as well. So we had games every day, Ken. It was a gauntlet ride, but it was
Oh
a very
yeah.
special one.
Yeah, it was definitely worth it. Obviously, congratulations to both the men's and women's USA basketball team winning gold. That was amazing. But no, I mean, hearing stories like that from like, like 13, like I wanted to do it. I mean, I've been wanting to do this since I was probably in eighth grade, even
There you
before then.
go.
Like growing up, it's just been so tough. Like I turned 30 this past summer and I'm like, it is what it is. I may never get it, but I got a taste of doing high school ball late, what should I say? Winter maybe last year, I should say. Like
Right.
December, January. So that was kind of cool, like co-hosting, playing, doing play-by-play stuff like that. That was kind of tough some days. Like I kind of can relate. Obviously, the NBA is different than high school, but I was doing some, games and stuff. It was by myself, and that's kind of tough, obviously. But
Yeah,
d
man.
doing it for a little like small local station where I live in town and stuff like that. But no, this was definitely great. I mean, I love speaking with you, and we still got time to continue. So if you want to talk, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but if you want to talk about like your NBC journey and how that transpired, and did you do some stuff for Fox too? I swear you did some NFL games for
Yeah,
Fox.
correct. So, basically once I got the Clipper job in LA, it was an interesting time because I started in 2019. I started our first game, I guess, would have been October of 2019. And
Yep.
so if that's what you want to consider my start date, that's cool. So October 2019 basically was when I first began with the Clippers. And if you think about it, we were rolling, 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 rolling. And then March 2020 hits and COVID
Oh
now
yeah.
shuts everything down. So I went, it was my first year as a professional broadcaster. It was my first year in this brand new role. And I was really finding momentum. And then it just stops. And so for 3 months, there was no sports, there were no events, there was nothing to cover. So around June 2020, things started back up again in tennis, which I've done tennis as well for the last 5+ years, was starting back up. So it allowed me to get back into the work mode and then the bubble and everything else. But because of COVID and because the travel schedule was a little different, it allowed me to kind of add more things to my resume because I was a little bit more around than I would have been if
Mhm.
I was still traveling all the time. And so first I did a couple years back, I did a couple games on CBS college football. They asked me to do some Mountain West and then some SEC games, which was amazing.
Mhm.
And then the following year, after the work that I did that year, Fox called and said, "Hey, we want you to do an entire season of college football with us." And I was like, "Great, that sounds good to me." So I did college football that whole year. I ended up doing, to your point, one NFL game on Fox during that season. I did the Falcons and the Niners. And then later
Yep.
that year, Fox produced an NFL Network game. And I did the Vikings and Colts, which ended up being the largest comeback in NFL history and
Oh,
one
that
of the
was a couple of
crazier.
seasons ago. I think I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a crazy, crazy, crazy game. And so after that year, as I was going through with Fox, NBC ended up reaching out, wanting to meet. So we ended up meeting and everything went very well. And they said, we want to bring you in to do this Big Ten package that we're going to get. And I said, that sounds awesome to me. And so we end up doing Big Ten Saturday night this past year. And with that, we did a regular season NFL game on NBC between the Steelers and the Bengals. And then we ended up doing a wild card game between the Texans and the Browns. And I've gotten real lucky because I've been involved with the Nickelodeon broadcast
Oh,
for the
yep.
last 4+ years here. So we ended up doing the Super Bowl on Nickelodeon as well. So it was a fun year of football last year. And I'm looking forward because we've got an incredible slate for the Big Ten this year as well.
Are you going to do a lot of Notre Dame games too? Because I know NBC has, I don't know if they still got a partnership with Notre Dame, but
They do. So there's still a Notre Dame crew, but we'll end up doing at least one, maybe two of the Notre Dame games this year as well that are going to be put in the prime time. Essentially, if the games are prime time on NBC, our crew does them, and if they're a daytime slot for Notre Dame, the Notre Dame crew does them. So we'll have some, yeah, we'll have some Irish in there as well. That was the cool assignment I got. My first ever game on NBC last year was a last second switch because the broadcaster who was supposed to do the game wasn't feeling great and couldn't make it. And so they called me last minute and I had to fly literally less than 24 hours later to Dublin,
Jeez.
Ireland. And I go to Ireland and it was Notre Dame and Navy and we did the game and it was one of the cooler experiences of my career. I loved Dublin. I loved the people there. So it was awesome, but definitely a mad dash for that one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much that goes into a broadcast. You guys got to go through meetings. At the college level, do you guys meet with the players and the coaches just like the NFL? Because I hear about it in the NFL all the time. Like, yeah, I met with Coach Belichick on Wednesday, Thursday, in our production meetings. So
Yeah.
it must be the same thing on the college side too.
Yeah, exactly the same. And so it depends on it goes crew to crew. Some crews really like doing coach and coordinators. Some
Hmm.
crews prefer players. Our crew is we set it up a certain way where we really get to meet with coaches and players, which is great. And it adds to me a lot to the broadcast. I think that it's important because it gives us perspective, mostly from their sides, but also it gives us maybe stuff that the fans wouldn't be able to fund on their own. And so it allows for us to report and do justice by both teams by properly doing it that way. It also gives us a little bit of an insight on what we can expect to see during the game. So it really helps us preparation wise. If a coach tells us something on a Wednesday or even on a Friday, the day before a game, we can now look for it ahead of time or at least be alert to what's going to happen ahead of time instead of being completely fooled.
Man, that's I don't even know what to say. That's so cool. I mean, meeting with production crews and coaches and coordinators and players, it's that must be like inspiring, honestly. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I'm running out of words to say. I mean, is there one moment that you were looking forward to that you knew maybe a week or two that, all right, I'm gonna meet with so and so, and you were excited to actually meet with them? I mean, any level, any sport, feel free to share, one of your famous production meetings if you'd like.
Yeah, Ken, I'm always excited to meet with everybody,
Yeah.
which is a very political answer, but it's true because I just you never know what's going to come from it. I always love meeting with Jim Harbaugh because he goes on so many tangents and he says so many different things that you just never know what's going to come. I love meeting with Ryan Day because it's very nitty gritty and you got to pay attention and he wants to make sure that you are on your P's and Q's. You have to be at your best. And I know that was similar to Coach Belichick in a lot of ways, who I've never
Yep.
met with, but my dad has many, many times. And he's told me that Bill, you can earn Bill's trust so long as you're doing your homework the proper amount and so long as you're handling your business the right way. But I love meeting with all the players and all the coaches. I would say one of the highlights was Mike Tomlin, and
Hmm.
he's known as one of the best in these settings. He's just really good. He comes in, he gives you everything you could possibly ask for before you even can ask it. And then he
Wow.
goes, "Any questions?" And you're like, I mean, you answered every okay. Yeah, let me find some other questions I can ask. He's awesome. I'm a huge fan of his. I was a huge fan of Kevin Stefanski and the whole Cleveland Browns. One of the ones that I really enjoyed was we met with David Njoku before the playoff game, the tight end
Hmm.
for the Browns. And David and I actually played high school basketball against each other. So it was like a whole trash
Oh,
talk back and
wow.
forth within our whole meeting. And the rest of our crew was kind of laughing because he sat down and I was just like, man, those battles, Cedar Grove and West Essex. And he goes, why don't you tell everybody who won those games? And I go, you did. You won those games. So there's a lot of that. But yeah, we have fun with them. To me, if you can make the people comfortable, you're going to get the best answers out of them. And so that's what we try to do.
Oh man, that's awesome. I mean, obviously you guys probably going back to the Browns Texans playoff game. Did you have a chance to meet with D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud and them guys too?
They were awesome. I mean, I
Yeah.
had heard how great I had met with D'Amico Ryans the year before when he was the defensive coordinator in San Francisco. So
Hmm.
I had known him a little bit and was super, super impressed of just how organized, how buttoned up everything that he does is. and his overall vibe and how he can then have that permeate through the team. And you could see that obviously on the field. But CJ Stroud, I didn't really know what to expect. I had heard great things, but you obviously are going to get your own opinions on everything. And he could not have been any better in the meeting. He could
Oh
not have
wow.
exceeded the expectations anymore. He is so smart. He is such a good team guy. He is such a Houston over CJ oriented type of person. And you could see how he raises the level of the rest of his team. So I'm pumped to see what he looks like year two because he
Hmm.
was so good, obviously, as a rookie, but you can't even imagine what type of untapped potential there still might be. And there certainly is. And he knows that. And so I think he's motivated to keep getting better, to try to be the best in the league at one point and try to be MVP, try to win many Super Bowls. You could feel that coming from him. So yeah, he was great. D'Amico was awesome. We met with Nico Collins, who had a
Hmm.
fantastic year. We met with Will Anderson, who was another just sensational rookie, and everybody in that building was really great. And part of that was the season that they had was monumental for the future of the organization. But more than anything, I think they were just excited to host a playoff game because it
Yeah.
was still up in the air as to whether or not that was going to happen. So they were great, and hopefully, I get another Texans game at some point soon.
Yeah, I mean, staying on the Texans is just they were bound to do something. I mean, back to the David Carr years, they've had a rough patch since entering the league in 2002. They've hosted Super Bowls there that used to be called Reliance Stadium, which I know the Patriots won against, I think, Carolina back in '03. I
Yeah,
mean, I
I
was a
noticed
young
you bring
buck,
that
but
one up, huh?
I do, yeah.
I respect it. I
No,
respect
no.
it.
But
Yeah, I mean, look, they had some pockets of years where they were very good. Matt Schaub was really solid
mhm,
for them at quarterback, and Arian Foster was run the ball.
he was
Andre
a beast.
Johnson, yeah. Now you got Hall of Famer Andre Johnson, who was
Hmm.
one of the best in the league for over a decade.
Many,
And
many
then you
years.
had the window with Deshaun Watson, where he was so good for them, and they were so good as a team with DeAndre Hopkins, then the future Hall of Famer. So they've had pockets, but to your point, it feels like they just haven't broken through. And no, who better than a guy who was on those teams that were fighting and trying to break through to be the head coach than D'Amico Ryans, and he understands what it means to be a Houston Texan. So I love that for them. I'm excited to see what they can do and continuing to build from the ground floor up.
Staying on the Texans for one more thing. Have you had a chance to sit down with Stephon Diggs in any of his stops between Buffalo, Houston, or even Minnesota? I mean, in your young career for sure.
No, I
No.
never have. I know my dad has, and he
Hmm.
loves his personality. He's got this
It's
infectious
passionate.
personality himself. No question. And look, he is a great addition because Nico Collins proved that he can be a number one receiver, and Tank Dell proved he could probably be a number two receiver, and obviously got hurt towards the end of the year. But you just think about the talent they have lined on that roster now. Really, at every skill position, they are set, and certainly at quarterback. And so as long as the offensive line does its part, that offense should be lethal. They have so many options, and Stephon is a perfect addition to what they want to do. So I'm excited to see what he looks like there. I'm not sure how he's going to be utilized compared to those other guys because I think they still deserve to get a lot of the attention that they did. But if nothing else, it should just take attention away from either Nico Collins or Tank Dell or Dalton Schultz or any of these guys will take attention away from Stephon Diggs, which is obviously a dangerous proposition for defenses.
Personally, I'm scared of that offense. I believe we play him at some point this week, being a diehard Patriot. Some point this week, Jesus. I meant to say some point this season. I know the season's right
Sure.
around the corner. But I think they might come to Foxborough, and I'm kind of honestly scared to play them because their offense is pretty electric. So we'll see how it is by the time they meet middle of the season or early to mid season. But I mean, what stay on the NFL topic. What's your expectations? I mean, I'm assuming you're a diehard Jets fan. I mean, what's your expectations without the whole league, maybe MVP or even Jets expectations?
So I would tell you that once I got to being a professional, your fandom goes out the
It
window
it
if
does.
you
It
lose or
does. I
win.
understand
Yeah.
that.
So I wouldn't say I'm a fan anywhere necessarily at this point.
Hmm.
I definitely just follow the league and make sure that I keep tabs around, and I certainly follow the New York scene because I live here.
Yeah.
But uh, expectations, the first thing I'll say is that I think we've all learned, and I've been saying this for years, especially since Brady has departed, that
Hurts my
betting
feelings.
betting against Patrick Mahomes is a bad idea.
It
And
is.
so I've realized that that has reigned truer and truer with each passing season. So I expect that the Chiefs are always going to be there. They're always going to be a threat. I'm curious to look at the Bengals. Can they be healthy? Because before Joe Burrow went down, they were starting to click again. And we know how dangerous they can be. It feels like Buffalo's window is still open if everything goes right. A lot of their nucleus isn't there from what it
Unknown.
has been in the past, but you still have one of the best quarterbacks and weapons in the league in Josh Allen. I think Dalton Kincaid has a chance to be a legitimate star. And so you've got pieces there that can be dangerous. And that's really just on the AFC side. Look, the Jets have all the talent. They really do. I mean, Brees Hall is a stud. Garrett Wilson is a stud. You bring in Mike Williams. Who knows what happens if Devontae Adams finds his way then to New York as well. But you've got pieces now. And I mean, the kid they drafted, Corley, the wide receiver, is supposed to be pretty solid as well. So they have a lot of what they need. It's just going to be, and obviously beefed up the offensive line, which was going to be the biggest concern for them. It's going to be whether or not Aaron Rodgers at 40 years old can stay healthy and can still play at an MVP caliber level. And if he can, their defense is as good as just about anybody in the NFL. And so that will dictate a lot because they can probably win solely on their defense 6, 7, 8 times this year alone. So if Aaron can raise their profile offensively, even just a little bit, even just slightly above average, they're a dangerous team. On the NFC side, the Niners are always going to be great. I think Kyle Shanahan is just a brilliant, brilliant mind. And so I expect them to be there. I've got the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles week 1. And I think both teams are legitimately Super Bowl type because I think, look, Philadelphia, they've been that way obviously for years now. I think last year it was a weird falter at the end of the season. But on paper, they have all the pieces. And you add Saquon Barkley, their defense, it should be better. It should be very good. Their offense, they have everything. And their offensive line is still going to be one of the best in the NFL. So there's no reason they can't lead the league in rushing with one of the more dynamic running backs. And
Mhm.
obviously, not the most dynamic quarterback. I would say Lamar Jackson probably has that, but one of a top 3 most dynamic quarterback in the NFL and Jalen Hurts. And then in Green Bay, I love Jordan Love. I'm a huge fan of what he does. And I think that receiving core, they've built it perfectly. They've really, really worked on building a strong defense, which we saw at the end of the season last year. And we saw just the overall growth of the youth that they have really now taken the time to pour into. And obviously, the way they finished last season to me is more of a sign of things to come for Jordan Love and that entire team. And he got rewarded with the contract. So those are teams that I expect to be there. I think the Lions have a chance to kind of keep the momentum from last year, but I think the Rams arguably will take another step forward. So long as Matthew Stafford is healthy for them, they're similar in the sense that they've got all the right pieces available to them.
Mhm.
They've got everything that you could want. And they add Blake Corum at running back in the draft. I love that because Kyron Williams last year was one of the breakout stars in the NFL, but Blake Corum's a perfect 1-2 punch with him. You've got 2 physical runners that are go downhill at you with a good offensive line, one of the better offensive lines that we saw in the latter half of the season last year. So there are a lot of teams that I think are threatening. I didn't even mention Baltimore. That was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year.
Mhm.
So you just look around the league. I think that's what makes the NFL so much fun every year is the parity that comes with it. But especially now, it just feels like it's up for grabs. And despite Patrick Mahomes dominating the league and still it hasn't been blowout, 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 blowout Super Bowl for Patrick Mahomes. It's been grinded out. So I think that shows us how close everything is.
I mean, it did string in my hearts last year because it was the first team since the '04 Patriots, I think '03, '04 Patriots to win back to back. So that's just me being a homer. Obviously, I'd have to set that aside if I ever become in your position. But yeah, I mean, no, it's definitely going to be an interesting NFL year. I look forward to it every single year being a Patriots fan, but I like overseeing the whole league just like yourself. I low key root for the Falcons and Cardinals every year because I'm a big Matty Ice fan, Michael Vick fan back in the day. What they used to do in Atlanta was pretty good. And obviously, I root for Kyler Murray because I'm a big Kyler Murray fan. But it's definitely going to be an interesting year. Safe travels to Brazil, by the way, if you're doing the Friday game there, right? Is that going to be on Amazon or is that on NBC too?
It is on Peacock. It is a
Peacock.
Peacock
I'm sorry.
exclusive. Yes,
That's
everybody
what it
who
was.
got Peacock for the Olympics, congratulations. You can also watch that game.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, as long as their trial is still expanded till the beginning of September, but
Good
um
luck.
yeah. No, no, I appreciate you you joining my podcast. Obviously, we got like about 4 minutes. I did want to point out that that's that Emmy that you won that I seen on Twitter like maybe a few months ago.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Oh, congratulations. And explain to the folks who was that for, because I probably forgot what exactly it was for.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so I won. I was real lucky this year and fortunate to even just be nominated with that group. But I got selected as the Emmy Award winner for emerging on-air talent. So basically, the up and coming group. Greg Olson had won it the year before, so I'll take that as a big win to
Yeah.
follow in his footsteps because he's had quite the year overall and continues to really dominate the scene. So it was a really amazing honor, amazing night, and it was cool. My parents were there, and so I got to share it with them. I got to share it with a lot of my coworkers, and yeah, it's gonna sit over here for a little while. I got to make sure that it stays clean and doesn't collect any dust, but I like having it over here.
Where was that event held, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, it was in New York. Yeah, it was in New York City.
Oh, wow. Very impressive. I mean, New York's beautiful. I mean, a lot of stuff happens. I mean, that's your hometown being from New York, New Jersey, and stuff like that. So New York City is definitely a sight to see. If nobody's seen it, at least see it once in your life. So I think I've
Got
been
to
there a
do it.
couple of times.
Yeah, got
But
to do it. Just walk around a little bit.
that's true. Appreciate it, Noah. Thank you so much.
You got it, Ken.